And welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus. I'm Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki, along with our Ag Director Bridgette Readel, and we've got a little bit of rain on radar right now. We're getting some light rain just south of Abercrombie towards Wahpeton. Some more moderate showers now pulling in from the south around the Hankinson area, stretching over towards Elbow Lake and south of there. So all of that moving in a northeasterly direction. So a lot of this is going to scoot to just to the east of the valley into Lakes Country. But I do think we'll see a few scattered showers here over the next hour or so moving in from the south. But don't look for a lot of rain. This should be generally a tenth of an inch or less. Now, some of the areas in the far southern valley, let's say Hankinson over towards Elbow Lake and then eventually up towards DL and New York Mills area. Some of those areas could pick up a little over a tenth of an inch, but not a whole lot. But it's a chilly one out there, Bridgette. It definitely feels more like October should.
Well, you're not hanging any clothes out on the wash line. And for those of us coming to you from the Coral Laundromat studio, we want to remind you that for those dirty jobs, you can haul those things right to the laundromat. They'll either do them for you or you can do self-service. And that is the Coral Laundromat studio, or excuse me, Coral Laundromat, and that is at 3620 Veterans Boulevard in Fargo. Stop by and see what they're up to today. They can help you out.
Yeah, and we've got some chilly weather on the way over the next couple of days. But after that, we're kind of on a big roller coaster ride, it looks like, as we head over the next week to 10 days with quite a bit of warm up and then cool down, warm up and cool down. I'll go into more detail here in a bit, but we're looking at those clouds hanging tight today. And again, we'll see a few of these showers pass through as we head into the afternoon hours. Highs today only around 50. We're in the mid 40s right now, so we're really not going to move a whole lot from where we're at. And then those showers will move out of the area tonight. We'll be left with cloudy skies, low 40s. And then tomorrow, winds pick up a little bit out of the southeast, about 10 to 20, and highs in the mid 50s. And then southerly winds really ramp up on Thursday. But we're still stuck in the clouds. But we'll have highs a little closer to 70 on Thursday. A few scattered showers, maybe even a thunder shower or two. And then we'll start to cool back down on Friday. We'll probably have a morning high in the 60s and then falling temperatures in the afternoon. And then blustery and much cooler on Saturday with highs only in the 40s. But then it looks like we warm up as we head into Sunday and Monday. And we'll continue that roller coaster ride, it looks like, as we see a bunch of fast-moving systems over the next week or so that'll warm us up, cool us down, warm us up, cool us down. We're getting some indications we may have a bigger storm around the 22nd, 23rd, and then another one possible, a bigger system towards the end of the month. So we're kind of in a more active pattern starting off this or going into this new LRC cycle, although we're not seeing a whole lot of precip out of this just yet. Although the other day we saw many areas saw between a half inch and an inch of rain, but with these next few systems, I'm not seeing a whole lot of precip out of it. Most of it should be staying to the east and to the south. So good news for harvest, as we did get some much-needed precip just a few days ago.
Well, yesterday coming through the Jamestown area, there was pretty heavy smoke. This was probably right around 4:30 yesterday afternoon. And I'm going to surmise, I couldn't see it, but I would surmise based on the smoke that there may have been a combine fire and or a field fire, some prairie grass, etc. Without a lot of wind, you could just see it definitely hanging over the city of Jamestown on the south side of town. And so, go ahead.
We drove through that. We were coming back from Hettinger over the weekend, and we drove through that yesterday. Yeah, we couldn't quite see it from the interstate, but yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Either a combine fire or maybe a control. It couldn't have been a controlled burn. It was pretty big.
This time of year, I don't think we're necessarily thinking about controlled burns. This is something that probably got away, but yeah, there was definitely quite a bit of smoke. And so safety is key. And let's not forget to make sure that those fire extinguishers are filled and that we are carrying those. There's a number of folks that even have not put their spray trailers away at this point so that they can make sure that they're able to keep water out at the field in case something does flare up and they need some time to wet the field down or try to save what piece of equipment they're with before local fire departments can arrive. So there's a lot that happens during harvest. Everybody please be safe. We want to make sure that you don't lose equipment and you certainly don't have any harm to anybody who's out in the field as well. Now, when it comes to talking about infield safety, maybe it's an unusual transition to talk about a weed zapper. There is indeed one, and you've seen them. They're tractor mounted. I did send a picture to Addison. He can put that on our live stream today. So if you are following along with us on Facebook and YouTube and Acres TV, you'll see on the screen a Massey Ferguson tractor that's pulling a weed zapper. And this is courtesy of some research that's being done in the state of Indiana. Well, this zapper looks like a toolbar on the front of the tractor. It has basically row units that would go between the rows of, let's say, soybeans, etc. And whatever is in the row, excuse me, in between the rows, so it wouldn't be touching the crop necessarily, but it would touch other plants, it gets zapped with powerful electricity. The weed zapper power is generated on a unit behind the tractor. I've seen them where they are like a PTO or a 3-point hitch mounted, or this one looks like it's a trailer. So one of the findings that we have is more folks are using them. In fact, there's a couple of folks here in the Red River Valley who are doing custom work with that. So they can be zapping weeds, let's say, for instance, in sugar beets. So if you are past the point of being able to legally spray a herbicide because the crop is too big, the weeds are too big, or too close to harvest and would interfere with the pre-harvest interval, you could use a weed zapper in crop to control problem weeds. Work is being done in a couple of states on using those weed zappers to terminate cover crop. Cover crop usually gets planted between cropping systems. It's there to help hold moisture in the ground. It is also there to help prevent weed problems and bring nutrients back into the soil. But you generally need to terminate your cover crop when you've planted your cash crop, say for instance corn. And some preliminary findings are showing that if you are using a pass at about a half mile per hour, you can effectively terminate oats, clovers, peas. In Texas, they did some work with cereal rye, and they're finding that with the cereal rye, it took a little more to terminate, took about 4 passes to get a 90% effectiveness, whereas 1 pass was effective for all those other cover crops, the oats, the clover, etc. Now, one thing that is being combined with that is if you were to mow the cover crop first and then bring the weed zapper through. But when you mow, what'll happen is you leave that fresh layer of plant material that will then brown, dry down, and now it becomes more of a kindling situation. So when you come by with the weed zapper, if it's been a long time since you used the mower, you now could potentially have a fire hazard. So keep some safety in mind when it comes to being able to do it. But we are looking at different ways of terminating those cover crops. Cover crop is certainly much more prevalent in the region than it has been, and so it's a thought that you could be using that as another cultural practice in your fields next season or in the future. We'll talk about this and many other things during the show today. We'll be joined by Max Steffes next. We'll be doing On the Auction Block with Steffes Group. And we want to talk about land auctions and other questions you may have. Also, at the tail end of the program, we're going to be joined by Dr. Jeff Bender. He is a veterinarian at the University of Minnesota. We're going to get an update on bird flu and biosecurity that's going on in Minnesota. But above all, you can always call with your questions, 701-293-9000. We'd love to have you ask them on air with us, and you can do that after we come back from the American Ag Network Livestock Update, and we'll continue with On the Auction Block with Max Steffes. Welcome to On the Auction Block with Steffes Auction at Steffes Group, excuse me. And so we are joined by Max Steffes by phone today. And Max, thank you so much. I have a list of questions for you from listeners and myself. So are you ready to roll?
Yeah, you bet, Bridgette. Good to visit with you. Steffes Auctioneers, Steffes Group, Steffes Auction. As long as there's Steffes in there, we're just fine with that, Bridgette.
And I tell you what, in this region, if you say Steffes, we all know they're talking about you.
That's the way we like it. Kleenex, everybody knows it's a tissue paper. We want that name synonymous with the auction business, and that's the way we like it.
Absolutely. Okay. With the current commodity price situation in farming, have you noticed, is there a spike in land auctions this fall as folks are considering changing over their operations, maybe just retiring in general?
There's a lot of transition that occurs from a land perspective in the fall of the year. I always tell people that most farms are sold after the crop has been harvested and before it's planted. So a lot of that's going on right now. We have about 50 land auction events to do before the end of the year throughout our trade area. And the majority of those are related to death and transition, to tell you the truth, Bridgette. There's not a lot of, when you're a farmer and you need to raise some capital for lending purposes, we always suggest land as a last resort. You don't want to let go of that land if you can help it. But there are some operators, of course, the commodity board isn't favorable from a cash flow perspective. So there are some operators out there that are looking at selling some land. And frankly, if we don't get a trade deal here with China, hopefully they'll buy some beans before the end of the year. I think there's going to be some more of that in the spring of the year, unfortunately.
Well, to that point, Max, if we were to receive some money from the government as a bailout this fall, particularly for soybeans, do you think that will lead to higher land prices or just finishing the deal on some that might already be pending?
I think it'll buoy the land market at its current levels, and I don't have a whole lot of reason to believe that this land market's going to flinch a whole lot in the short term, the next 6 to 8 months here. I think if commodity prices stay where they're at, and we're looking at a $3 corn market, July of next year, and $8-9 beans locally, then all bets are off. But this land market is still very robust both from a demand perspective and from a pricing perspective. There hasn't been a whole lot of movement down or up. There's still just really good demand out there, and that's keeping things up. And I think government money by way of some Trump bucks is just going to keep us where we're at, and I don't think it's going to move the needle a whole lot. Certainly will make a few guys more aggressive, if they were smart and sold some beans or sold some corn at a profit this year and have some extra cash laying around, certainly could lead to a couple upticks in prices, but not widespread. It's not going to be big enough. It'll be more of a Band-Aid from my view.
Okay. So, Max, here's an interesting and yet timely topic with the discussion about an increase in data centers in North Dakota. How would an AI data center affect farmland values?
Yeah, that's a good one, Bridget. So I think any time that you own land and you have developments that are going around it, I think that's a positive. It's really difficult to quantify that, though. But in general, when you have developments around your tract of land, whether it's farmland or transitional land, that's going to benefit you. There's a number of factors there. A lot of times there's infrastructure improvements by way of roads and rural water and that sort of thing. So if you can plug into some of those services next to your land, that's certainly going to make it more attractive. But I would tell you that it doesn't move the needle a whole heck of a lot, but it certainly doesn't hurt either. And of course, it depends on the tract of land and the location and that sort of thing.
I would agree with you. I've been told by others that the AI data centers are good for farmers, and I see a pros and cons of both sides of that. So I think it's going to be an interesting development to watch, especially as we see more of them widespread across North Dakota. Could there be a difference in what a data center means in western North Dakota near Williston versus what it might mean near Fargo and its effect on farmland? So maybe I'm on the wrong track there, Max, but that's just a thought.
It definitely doesn't hurt the tax base either. Obviously, these data centers, the numbers are just mind-blowing what they're investing in, and I think it'll benefit these rural communities that that are getting this investment directed towards them, and we should welcome that as a state. And obviously, we want to make sure things are done appropriately and consider everybody's viewpoints. But I view them as a positive, both from a land perspective and from a rural North Dakota perspective. And I think most people in production agriculture view things that way. Wouldn't you say, Bridgette?
I think so too. I think, the other thing is some of this is a little bit new, and there's going to take a little bit of time until it's like the ripple effect. You see that pebble drop and the immediate splash is big, and then things kind of level out. So I'll be curious to see what that looks like over time. Another
I sure would
question
like
from
to
a
be a
listener.
landowner that a data center went in on. That would be nice. That's another benefit of owning land. That's hard to quantify. You have a wind tower company or a data center all of a sudden wants to build on your land, and it's just goes to show you, buy land, ladies and gentlemen.
Every time someone says, and my dad has told my brothers this, in years past, never buy that. It's too expensive. It's never going to pay off. It always paid off in some way. It always paid off.
Isn't that the truth?
Last question from a listener. Who's buying land with these generational turnovers right now? We know in some cases it's passing through family, but not all. Who are the buyers that are interested these days in farmland?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of talk about that lately. Of course, we've all heard about Bill Gates buying land, and I would tell you in general that's overblown. For the most part, on our land auctions, if say for example, if we do 10 land auctions, I would tell you that 8 of those land auctions are going to be sold to farmers that are going to go ahead and farm that land. There's also a tremendous amount of investor interest from individuals that want to invest in land, but generally speaking, those individuals have ties to the local area that they're looking at a land purchase in. So if they're looking at land in Binford, North Dakota, and they live in New York, chances are that person that lives out of state was either originally from there or has cousins that farm land around there. There's some sort of a tie. It's pretty unusual to see someone sight on scene from one of these big cities or hedge funds and that sort of thing entering the market, but they are active and they are out there. But by and large, to answer the listener's question, it's farmers that's buying farmland.
And the farmers, and like you said, there's generally a history to it of some sort, whether it's family or we've been renting this land for a couple of decades, that type of thing. There's that connection that really means a lot when it comes to land buying.
Yeah, there's that connection, and the reality of it is they can afford to pay more than some of these more astute financial money people who just look at the bottom line and just look at the return. Land means so much more to the people that toil and work the land, and they'll pay up and they'll pay more and outbid a lot of those investors.
We had a lot of questions to answer today, Max, but did you have any highlights of auctions that are coming up that you wanted to mention, or any stats that you've had coming across your desk as of late?
There's a tremendous amount of activity coming up on our auction block at steffesauctioneers.com. You can go to the website and take a look. We got a couple pretty cool properties, including some recreational land up in Walhalla. There's a 40-acre tract that's surrounded by the Pembina River. That's a really neat little property. We've also got 80 acres with a hunting lodge on it up in Black Duck, Minnesota. So if you're looking for some hunting property this fall, I'd encourage you to take a look at those two auctions. Of course, all sorts of other activity, including tillable farm acreage. We got a big pasture ranch auction west of Bismarck towards South Amanda near St. Anthony. So there's lots of activity. The best place to do, and the best thing to do, I should say, is go to Steffes Auctioneers, steffesgroup.com, and take a look at what's coming up.
There's a whole list of exciting things that are happening, so check it out. There's probably something for you. Max, thanks for joining us today.
You bet. Always nice to visit, Bridgette. We'll talk to you next month.
Thank you. Talk to you then. And don't forget that we have On the Auction Block twice a month, because in 2 weeks we'll be joined by Brad Olstead with Steffes Group, and we'll talk more about machinery and equipment at that point in the month. So keep tuned for that. Next, we'll check in on our news at the bottom of the hour, and we'll return to cover some ag headlines and check on the weather with Dean.
Welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. I'm Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki. Along with Bridgette Readel, we have a little light rain now moving into the FM area. Some heavier rains stretching from, we'll call it moderate rain, from Wahpeton to Fairmont over towards Elbow Lake. All of that moving in a east-northeast direction. Also, a little bit of light rain stretching from about Lisbon through Grand Rapids. That's moving northeastward. If we focus on the Northern Valley, there's not a whole lot, a little bit north of Grand Forks, but out west, a little bit of light rain stretching from just south of Carrington through Jamestown. And again, all that kind of moving in the east-northeast direction. And again, we're not expecting a lot of precip out of this. We're expecting a tenth of an inch or less. Some areas in the far southern valley into Lakes Country could get a little bit more than that, but not expecting a lot. Now, there's rain in the forecast for every day this week, except for tomorrow. There's rain in the forecast for every day this week. But again, I'm not expecting anything widespread or heavy, just kind of hit and miss showers here and there. And kind of a roller coaster in temps. 40s today, 50s tomorrow, near 70 on Thursday. Back into the 50s and 60s on Friday, 40s on Saturday, and then back into the 50s and 60s as we head into next week. So kind of an up and down looking forecast. No big storms to really look at. As we get towards the end of the month, I think we'll see the possibility that towards the end of the month of a bigger storm. That's not set in stone, but again, we're just starting out this new LRC cycle. And it started out on the drier note, and it's still relatively dry outside of the rain we had the other day. But it does look like we're going to start getting a little more active over the next 2 to 3 weeks. So, and again, that all kind of domino effects into the rest of the winter and spring. So we don't want it too dry, but we don't want it too wet either, especially with harvest still going on. And I even noticed out west, Bridgette, they still haven't even started on the corn, even Bismarck westward. I was kind of surprised. I thought they'd already start harvesting the corn. It looked ready to go, but obviously they're not ready yet.
Well, and there's a fair amount of moisture or higher moisture corn yet. Talking with producers like in north central South Dakota, they figured a lot of their corn was in that 20 to 25% range. And so they might have to dry it just a smidge, or if they can hold off and combine a little bit later and it has dried down naturally, that'll help. There were some combines going yesterday. I came back from Bismarck, saw a lot of soybeans coming off, and I did see a few corn combines rolling. So everybody's making those inroads, you might say, getting started with whatever they can possibly do. And one of the things to think about is when it comes to making sure that you have enough propane for drying down that corn, or even enough fuel for your trucks. Codeco Fuels and Propane is here to serve you. They can bring transports right to the farm to offload so that you never run out and have all the resources that you might need. So check out their discussions and what they have on their website. Additionally, when it comes to Ellingson Company, they do drain tile work. Right now, we just finished talking with Max Steffes of Steffes Group about land prices, and land prices and value will increase with tile systems. That pricing has been consistent. It's been an added benefit to what people do as a land improvement. So if you are thinking about something that you might be doing in the next year or two to increase your productivity, talk to the folks over at Ellingson Companies about your drain tile and making sure that's going smoothly for you as well. In the world of farming today, we often do fertilizer applications in the fall, and we can do that with some of our nitrogen. Our P&K usually goes down in the fall. We might wait till spring to do nitrogen. Right now, if you are considering nitrogen, your most cost-effective method of doing that would be with anhydrous ammonia. That's NH3. And when it comes to anhydrous, that is the nitrogen form in a pressurized vapor. Whereas if you were doing 28 or 32%, that would be your liquid nitrogen form. Your dry nitrogen is in urea. Well, not only is your anhydrous ammonia currently the most cost effective, but if it's your go-to for fertility, you need to have that discussion with your suppliers because supply is tight at this point to get nitrogen moved around. And otherwise, logistically, you can have some challenges because not every retail location for agronomy carries anhydrous. We've seen a lot of anhydrous move further in the western part of the state because you have folks over here that, due to high regulations, it's more common to see us using like a 28% or a 32% as a starter liquid fertilizer, particularly in corn. We're not using anhydrous ammonia like some others might be doing. And again, we have a lot of urea that goes out as a dry fertilizer at plant. So at this point, if you are considering using anhydrous ammonia, talk to your supplier. We did have some supplies, some purchasing of fertilizer in July, but right now, if you're thinking about using the the vapor form, the anhydrous ammonia, you'd want to have that discussion with your supplier. Russia has not been a reliable supplier for us as of late. Generally, they supply us with about 49% of our total U.S. product, but that's not a guarantee right now. There are some very big changes in world supply chains, and we aren't necessarily seeing things as smoothly as they once were. What is being done smoothly, though? Well, that's the application. And AGCO has announced their nominations just closed for Operator of the Year. It's been going on for 20 years, where they have been highlighting those who do a fantastic job when they are out custom applying, whether it's dry fertilizer or chemistries. They stand out in what they do. They are efficient and accurate in covering their acres. They are sought out by other applicators for advice and training. They really embrace new technology, can be the first in the door to get work done, maybe the last to leave. Really the definition of a winner. This year's winner of AGCO's Custom Applicator of the Year Award will receive a Polaris side-by-side UTV or the cash equivalent thereof. There will be 3 top applicators who get an all-expense-paid trip to the the Ag Retailers Association convention in Salt Lake City, Utah, at the beginning of December, and then the top applicator will be announced on stage. Looking forward to seeing who that is. Those folks are nominated from all across the U.S., and AGCO has done a brilliant job over 20 years of recognizing the fine work that they do for us in agronomy every day. I'm very excited to see where that goes. Well, we also want to give a little bit of time here at the end of the day because we're going to be joined by Dr. Jeff Bender. He is with the University of Minnesota, and Jeff is he's a veterinarian, and we're going to be talking about bird flu and so much more, especially biosecurity, and we will do that when we return. We are joined today by Dr. Jeff Bender. He is a veterinarian with the University of Minnesota. Dr. Bender, I got a press release from y'all talking about the bird flu. And sounds like we've had a recent confirmation in a commercial turkey flock in LeSueur, Blue Earth, and Stearns counties. What are things that University of Minnesota is doing to work with producers to try to reduce the spread of bird flu?
Well, thanks for having me on. And with the fall migration, we see the birds coming through, and that puts really a risk, especially to our poultry operations. But as you're probably well aware, that there's also been some concerns about detection in other animals as well. That includes not only just wild animals and wild birds that are around, but also cattle. So some of the projects that we're working on are quite varied. One is having early detection systems. What's happening with the wild birds? Are we seeing those positives that are coming down? Also working directly with producers to say, hey, what's the best way, or how can we think about good practices to try to keep those birds, that virus, out of those barns, and try to keep those birds as safe as possible. The other is understanding the new issues that are happening, understanding the virus itself and what it's doing and what it's changing, and also what's happening, especially with the other animals that are being exposed to this virus. The idea here is we don't want this virus to come around and then to intermix with other viruses and kind of create a new kind of super influenza virus. So it's really important that we take measures to really control the spread of this.
Have we seen any, I don't know if results is the right word, but are you able to start tracking data, et cetera? And have you started to see some results of that? Or is it still a little bit early in the process for all the things that you are doing?
Yeah, when you think about, we've been dealing with influenza for many, many, many years. And, as you recall, we had a fairly large outbreak here back in 2015. That was a good first start to us to remind producers to say, hey, we need to think about how do we improve biosecurity, and what does that look like? And that biosecurity not only involves the people that might be coming onto your farm as visitors, but basically, all the feed trucks and rendering trucks and other folks that come onto the farm and maybe taking those precautions. But then also how we train our staff. How do we actually do a good job to say, hey, how do we make sure that we're not bringing it in our clothes and in our vehicles and those type of things? So I think that, we've been doing some of those things. So, we have seen fairly substantial outbreaks occurring and continue to occur. And I think that we've been making progress to improve the biosecurity. I think the other thing that we're learning is that there are other factors that we need to consider, other tools that we need to really control this, especially when you think about the livelihood of basically producers and the workers that are impacted, with the loss of birds and the loss of income that goes with it. So yeah, I would try to say it's in process. And we still need to look at it. And unfortunately, the virus is changing too. So I think we need to come up with new tools.
This may be a question that's a little hard to answer, but you're a vet and I know you're a genius, so I'm going to ask. And that is, how often does the virus change and mutate? Because we know in human health it's pretty fast. I don't think it's any different in the livestock world.
Yeah, and this is actually something that we've continued to grow and to learn about, is that we recognize that some species have the ability to take the human strains and animal strains or the bird strains and actually allow for that intermixing. And that's why we really want to try to keep the virus out of the barns, and that includes people, because people can carry influenza virus, especially this type of year. And so it's a good idea to get vaccinated. I know it's kind of an awkward term to use nowadays, because a lot of folks are a little bit suspicious about vaccination, but vaccinating for seasonal flu, and if you're going to be working in a swine operation or a poultry operation, how do we keep people from bringing the virus in and affecting those birds as a possibility, or affecting those pigs, because they have the ability to mix the virus together. So I think that's part of it, is that this virus does change. It does change fairly frequently almost irrespective of the host. And we know that certain hosts that actually allow for that the virus to interchange and to mix happens. And so we want to make sure we try to keep it out of those particular animals, and ideally out of people too, just so that it doesn't cause illness in us, and actually we continue to spread it.
And Jeff, we've got a question from one of our listeners via email asking, how much does weather impact these viruses? And their concern was, we haven't had any widespread freeze across the area. Does weather impact the virus at all?
Yeah, it does. There's a couple things to think about when we think about, some of these respiratory viruses or influenza viruses in particular. As I mentioned, we're in the fall migration season, so we are seeing many of these birds come down. We do see the fact that they do carry it. We've actually been detecting it in a number of these birds. And with certain weather conditions, it really, why do we see it with the fall and spring migrations? It's probably really due more to just, basically these birds moving through. However, there probably are other environmental conditions that might allow for that. Back in 2015, we had some real concerns about it was a lot of wind. Fairly dry conditions really allowed for that virus to actually move. I think that's been some of the concern as well in California. California's got hot, dry kind of weather, but they were seeing the movement there. So weather does play a role. It tends to like that drier environment versus the high humidity environments. In that kind of environment, it settles out versus actually might be floating in the air a little longer. And actually, when you think about within a barn or that type of thing, then it can probably spread a little bit more, in those conditions. So yeah, weather can play a significant role for many of these things. On the human side, in the wintertime, we go inside, the weather's a little bit drier, we tend to congregate together, so we tend to share, colds and other things as well.
Dr. Bender, you have been working with the College of Veterinary Medicine to launch an interactive map and dashboard that tracks avian bird flu across the state. Where can people find that, and how often does it update for accuracy for producers who are watching it?
Yeah, actually, that's actually a couple of my colleagues that are doing that work, that are doing that active mapping, and so I probably can't speak as well as I should be able to, because they're the ones that have been doing that active tracking and mapping. And so I think that they do it on a regular basis. It's probably on a weekly basis. We get a lot of samples that come through, and they test those usually within a 24-hour period, and then basically update that to give a place where we can provide a real-time impact, especially for wild birds and wildlife that actually are testing positive. In addition, the Raptor Center also is testing. So those raptors, those are birds of prey like hawks and owls. They test separately, and so that's another mechanism that we have. And then working a lot with wildlife rehabilitation folks, we can actually test that as well. And as you're probably aware, that each state now has set up plans to test their dairy cattle. And so there are a number of different surveillance systems out there to kind of give us a best way of doing that, in addition to also testing, especially our poultry flocks on a regular basis.
Yeah, this is not going to slow down. We know that bird flu is here for the extended period of time because it's been here for many years as well. It just changes slightly. And University of Minnesota has a veterinarian diagnostic lab. Are you doing the tests on carcasses at that point for bird flu? Is that how that lab works?
Yeah, so it's a number of sources that are providing that. It might be carcasses. It might be actually live birds that are being brought in for rehabilitation. So that there's a number of ways that basically opportunistic sampling, if you will, of wildlife that might be available or comes in contact.
Okay, those are helpful things. And really, one last item that you have is there's a $1.5 million cooperative agreement grant coming from USDA to continue to help fund all of the work that you're doing, especially with dairy? And have you been able to start some of that work as well?
Yeah, again, that's a number of my colleagues that are doing that, and basically trying to understand how the virus is spread. How do we actually control that? And so so those are actually ongoing. And so really, it is a kind of a national effort to try to understand and try to protect, our livestock, our poultry, as well as people.
There's a lot happening, and University of Minnesota is the head of it, especially because they are one of the leading states for not only chicken, but also turkey production. And we got to watch the wild bird population too. Thanks, Dr. Jeff.
And my pleasure.
Thanks, Jeff. And that'll do it for us today on Weather and Ag in Focus. But don't go anywhere. The Jay Thomas Show is coming up next.